to Serial Podcast 9.
Hey, I'm Gerard Peralta.
And I'm Kevin Peterson.
I'm Ryan Benoit, and this is Serial Podcast 9.
So today we're talking about seat time versus building a sick car. What do you need to do, and what should you do? Let's talk.
I feel like you do know because you've done it several times.
Well, I mean, we have maybe slightly different opinions, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like this is all going to be very much in the same ballpark, and that's why we're all friends, is because we have probably the one thing that unites us besides having cats is that, and we don't sit around and talk about cats. It's the fact that we all like dope drift cars.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that settles that.
Yeah, all right. Good night, guys.
Okay. But as a newbie, like you're just getting in, you know what I mean? You're just getting into drifting. You're like, I need a car. Like, what do I do?
Yeah. If
I do a 1 year
new,
build, or do I
and you
just
wanna
buy something?
be a better drifter? Like that, I think that's the question, you know?
What was your first car, Kevin?
My first cool car was a 1986 Toyota Corolla.
AE86.
AE86. Drove the absolute living shit out of that car forever. I remember I got coilovers. That was my first mod. Super excited about that. And then like a long while later, I saved up and I got an LSD.
When did you first take the Corolla to the track? And what mods did you have done to it when you went and like pursued drifting?
Okay, so I lied. My first mod wasn't coilovers.
This is good.
Yeah.
Bombshell. Yeah, no, I just remember this right now because this is hilarious. So, bought the Corolla, was all stoked, had some money left to burn. What do I do? Take out the interior, buy Takata harnesses.
Two or one?
Completely one, obviously one, because they're $700 or whatever they were. You know what I mean? Like completely stock Corolla, stock seat, no interior, Takata harness. Yeah, I was living the dream. Honestly, no, I just drifted on the street for a long time before I went to an event because there were no events back then.
Yeah.
And then like the first event there was, I went to it and the strut of my car ripped out from the top hat.
That was the first event?
That was the first event, yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Gerard, same question. What was your first car, or what was your first drift car?
Okay, well, I'm older than God, so my first car was a Volvo GT. It was rear-wheel drive. It was manual, and I definitely 100% drifted that thing. But back then, it wasn't really called drifting. Like this was, I don't even know what year that was, man. 1993, 94. So it was like pretty much like, we called it power sliding or sliding around or whatever you want to call it, fishtailing. But, that's like kind of all I did in that car. It was always raining here. So this just, had 130 horsepower, but it was a fairly well-balanced car and it slid around a lot. But there were no events. I mean, we would go to Lot D and drift in the dirt and drift in the rain and all that stuff. And that was my first car. But then, and then I had numerous other cars, but I also had an A86 at one point, but never went to any events in any of those cars. Because, I mean, the events didn't start till, when was that event, Kevin?
I want to say it was like 03, maybe.
Yeah,
04.
03. Yeah, I had the AE in like 99, 2000. Like I just slid around on the street and stuff. And like, I thought it was sick, but yeah, there was no like drift events. I took it drag racing one time, but that's about it. So my first drift car was an MX-83 Cressida that I put a 1J in and had a welded diff and coilovers. So that was it was $100 car, but like, yeah, I built that car as a JZX81. And that was my first like drift car.
I can tell you what my first car was. It's not
Tell.
It is 1993.
You can just cut it out later.
Yeah, it was a 1993 Mazda MX-3 V6.
Yo, Presidia?
Yeah, and then I put
sick sounding car.
And then I put 17-inch TSW Molas on it. Actually,
Nice.
I started with Revos.
Gerard loves TSWs.
Anyway, that was my first, and then I bought a 180 that I tried drifting in, and then started doing media instead.
So yeah, I guess the question is, should you just go buy a car that is capable and just go drive it, or should you, spend all this time building some car that, may be sick, but like maybe is unnecessary? Like, what do you need to learn to drift? And what's more important, to have the car that is sick or to have seat time in some car that is good enough? Let's ask Kevin.
I think that's all dependent upon your end goal, but like I come from like the seat time, I would say half of the argument. Yeah, I feel that like the time in the car is super important. You can kind of outdrive a poorly set up car, if you will. If you're a really great driver, you can hop into a variety of cars and drive them. Also, like learning to drive a car that isn't set up properly is going to take you forever to learn how to drive. So I don't know. There's like a million ways to look at it, you know.
So I remember seeing Kevin at a drift event in that AE86, and like, yeah, it was definitely drifting. He was a very good driver, but I mean, the car had like maybe fucking 80 horsepower, 100 horsepower or something. And like, yeah, he was driving the living shit out of that car, but it was like, it's kind of lame. Like, it was just like, you know what I mean? And I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's totally drifting. And at the same time, if he would have had, say, I don't know, like a JZX90, it would have been infinitely fucking sicker. You know what I mean?
So first, I think we should change our intro theme to your impersonation of Kevin's car. That should be the intro to the podcast.
Anybody who's had an AA6 knows that
exactly
sound
knows
well.
exactly that sound. Yeah.
It's funny though, because both of the drift cars that you guys took to the track are, by modern standards, super cool cars to own.
Yeah.
We're going to give this advice to modern day people that don't have access to a time machine to go back and buy cars when they were affordable.
Well,
Yeah,
well, I know what
I
I'd
mean,
buy today, hands down.
Yeah,
like
I mean, we
instantly.
could talk about that too.
Okay, I don't really know how to drift, and if I wanted to learn how to drift, I agree. You should probably learn how to drive before you build a car. So I'm on that sense. But then, so what would you buy to learn how to drive in? And I was like, I just fucking build the Aristo and learn how to slide that, which is not what I should do. That's very counter all of the advice I'd give someone.
I would also highly recommend against that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that is the car that I'd be like, well, I have it and I like it and that's what I want to drive.
Yeah,
and
run what you brung.
Because I know everybody now is super into like, I'll just get a BMW E36, and they're like, I'll just get that. And it's like, I have no desire to watch anyone drift one of those cars. Maybe I would have to drive one to understand it. But modern day now, what cars would you guys buy to get seat time in?
Well, I don't know if you saw, but I just bought a seat time car. So.
No, I mean, you phoned me and told me about it.
Yeah. I bought a G35 sedan. It does need a few things, like it needs to be manual swapped and stuff. But that, I mean, if I could find a 6-speed one, that's what I would buy. G35 or 350Z, any of those variants, 6-speed, out of the box, pretty good car. Makes decent power, fairly light, handles well, lots of parts.
Gerard's really driving home the point that he doesn't like Toyotas anymore, so that's great.
Well, I mean, really, what's your other choice? Is basically an IS300. That's kind of the only thing you could possibly buy from Toyota that has a manual transmission and it can even remotely drift. I guess you could buy a BRZ, or sorry, we keep saying BRZ, FRS,
GT86.
And I mean, I don't know. I've never tried to drift one, but I mean, like, I would assume it's very similar.
That to me is the Corolla. That's the modern. It's got to be the modern day Corolla.
But so why don't you give a shit about it then? If you were Mr. Corolla back in the day, why wouldn't you be Mr. Corolla today?
Because I'd like to say I'm advanced beyond that. No, like the Corolla. I'm super glad I grew up and started with the Corolla. I think like driving the underpowered car teaches you all these fundamentals about how to properly drive when you have the power. And it's like when we started driving, it was like there people didn't have knuckles. That wasn't a thing, and like so everybody drove without knuckles, and then all of a sudden like knuckles were a thing. So it was like, okay, well now you can take it a bit further. And it's like back then I had a friend who basically like threw a ton of money into a 240 hatch, like wide body, wheels, coils, diff, like blacktop SR, like seat, steering wheel, like everything all at once. And then had like super shitty tires because he couldn't get new tires because he spent all his money on his car, looped it in the rain and wiped the whole car out. And it's like, well, maybe if you just kind of did things one step at a time instead of trying to jump full force into it, you might have been better off, Because I kind of think that too. Like you have your car, you do one mod, you do another, you see how it feels. You drive it at the limit, you drive it past the limit a couple of times, and you get used to it. Like.
Okay, so yeah, that's a good thing. So how do you feel about the guy who spends the year or 2 years building this fucking ridiculous car, the perfect car. He's got the knuckles, he's got the engine, he's got, an LS, he's got Wise Fab, maybe even. I don't know. He's got all the stuff. He has very, very limited experience or none.
Angry?
The dude that shows up at the event with like the craziest car and like just sucks.
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe that dude will get better quicker than that same dude with a shitty car. Like
Yeah.
maybe now he has the recipe to succeed. Like whereas the other person going to do all like the like hard work and like learn how to do it without the proper tools, and then when given the tools they could do a better job. Obviously I'm gonna like hate on that dude. Like you know what I mean? Like, I'll probably just hate on him because he sucks. Like, no matter what. Like, you got the best car, you got the worst car. You're spinning out and like taking up time on track. I hate you. You know.
And then even when he does get good, you'll just hold it against him that he used to suck. I remember that guy when he used to suck.
Okay, so let me just say that then. I guess for you, my opinion would be, I would like to have a certain level of car to get the seat time in, and I feel like there's been a few arguments here and there. It's all relative, like what your opinion of the baseline is or whatever. And I guess my baseline would be, let's call it like a JZX. So JZX 81, 90, 100, 110. That would be the car that if I could, like, like if we were in Japan, I would buy a JZX 110 and that would be my car to learn to drift on because it's got enough power, it's good size, it's sporty, and there's a lot of parts available for it.
Buy a dope car to learn. But that, I think.
Well, see, that's what I mean. It's relative. Like, it's a dope car because everyone thinks it's a dope car, but like, that's why those cars are popular because you can just buy them and go drifting. You don't have to like build them, or you don't have to like spend all this time learning how to like clutch kick 8,000 times to do one corner because it can just do it.
It's a dope car because it is a dope car, essentially, right? Yeah. So to the guy who shows up at the track with a fully built car and no experience behind the wheel, it's like trying to be a Pokemon trainer controlling a fucking Charizard. It's not a good thing, man. Fucking, you can't do that. Noobs out there trying to control a Charizard. Here's my thing. I think it's about ego. I find this a lot is that, and I was like this when I was young. I liked cars the most out of my friends in high school. And because I was the person who liked cars the most, I therefore thought I would be a great driver. Because, like, why wouldn't I be? I loved cars. I think people confuse passion for liking cars with actual, like, skill set of driving cars.
Yeah.
And we can have this conversation till the cows come home, but there's always somebody out there that feels they're the exception. Like, yeah, seat time makes sense, but like I'm real good. I got natural talent, but I've never really driven. Realistically, I only know 2 people that I would say had like natural talent for drifting, like out of my close friends, and that was Carter Jackson.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
and Jordan Hall. Those are the 2 that were like, oh, you guys can just drive and you make it seem easy, and it seems hard for everyone else to learn.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with what Kevin's saying that it's like it's like the tools. Man, if you don't fucking know how to use an air hammer, or what are you going to do with it, right? Like if you're buying a tool and you have no idea what it is.
But if you never had the air hammer, you wouldn't even fucking, you know what I mean? You're just sitting there with a manual hammer and like.
It's like, imagine like if like, yeah, it's like a handsaw versus a chainsaw. Like, if you have the chainsaw, you're gonna fucking kill that tree way faster than if you have the handsaw. But if you've used the handsaw for years and years and years, and you know how to do it properly, then when you use the chainsaw, you're gonna like just rip through it.
Well, maybe the chainsaw's broken one day, and you got to use the handsaw. And if you didn't use the handsaw in the first place,
now you still have the skills. Exactly.
Seems wildly dangerous to just be using a chainsaw if you don't fully understand how dangerous it is.
Well, that's
like a 600 horse LS car.
Exactly. We all agree then. Wildly dangerous to have the 600 horsepower Wise Fab show up and just believe in yourself, opposed to putting in the seat time.
Well, I'll tell you what. Okay, so when we went to Final Bout in Chicago, and like I literally hadn't driven in 8 years, and I show up with like this Aristo, and it's like pretty crazy. I would say in the field, it was like definitely unique and like pretty built and stuff. And I go out there, and I'm like fully sucking, and I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like I don't even belong here. But then Yeah, I got a couple of ride-alongs with Alia and Carter and stuff, and then I got my group back, and I was like, okay, yeah, I remember how to do this. But yeah, I was totally that guy. Show up with like a crazy Aristo, spin out 8 times on like the first lap or something, and I was just like, man, like I'm getting clowned.
But you
It's
came
just
from a background of
nerves.
learning how to drive, though, right? There's a difference of like
Yeah,
remembering how to ride a bicycle
yeah.
and
I'm
not knowing how to ride a
Not
bicycle and
knowing how to
buy
ride a
Yeah, that's
bicycle.
true.
$7,000 bicycle and being
Yeah.
like, here I go. Like it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah,
I'm in
I'm
the
also
bicycle competition.
Hello, Tour de France. I just bought a $7,000 bicycle. I'm ready to
Yeah.
go.
I'm ready. Sign me up.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, what was your answer to the car? So, you don't get to buy a Corolla. You don't get to, you got to buy a car today. You're going to learn seat time.
That's honestly like a really interesting question, and I almost would buy the same stupid car that Gerard would buy. Like I already had it. I don't like it, but it just makes sense. And like if you want to buy a car and be able to go drifting like right out the bat and for cheap and put the least amount of money into it, like you're just going to be buying tires. Yeah, it's got to be the 350Z or the whatever G35.
but
Like
those
for
cars can look cool though.
that we're not even talking about that.
Okay, okay.
But no.
Also, 10
But
years
no.
ago, they could look cool. So, good. If it was 10 years ago, we'd all be able to afford the cheaper right-hand drives that are now super expensive. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I guess if I don't want to say that car, I would say the 110. It is a bit more work, but it would probably be a more fun little like just straight up track time car. But
Yeah,
it
except when
definitely
you
be more
smash it,
money.
you can't get any body panels or whatever for it because it's Japan.
I think I would, given the options now,
Yes.
Yeah.
maybe I would take the FRS.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's the closest you get to a Corolla, and it's.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I guess for me, the 200 horsepower, does it even make 200 horsepower?
I think the new one makes like 220 or something, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, like, you can drift it, sure. But I mean, I've seen guys drift stock FRSs. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it handles amazingly. It's super light and small.
Honestly, like I'm sure the people in the car are grinning ear to ear, having a ton of fun, but it's just not fun for anybody else.
So this goes into the masturbation category of drifting when when the dudes got the cars that they love, like when it's fully for themselves but nobody else there is having like a time with it.
That's how you describe like an E36 with no windows that's just
Yeah.
completely crumpled.
Yeah, okay,
It's like
okay.
you're not helping people enjoy the sport of drifting.
But you're
just-
enjoying the seat time
You're
of
just
drifting.
enjoying the living shit out of drifting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then but at the end of the event when nobody has pictures of you and then you're sad about it.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a pretty harsh like ego thing. Like
yeah.
What
Yeah,
part
I
of
mean
it? Expecting that you have photos?
or being upset that you don't.
I can tell that you've never taken photos at a drift event.
I've been home for like 2 hours since a drift event and like been trying to scour the internet for any source of photos from the event. And then you do that like every 8 hours
10 minutes.
for the next week.
It is a bit not important for me, but like I want to buy like a practice car or like a seat time car or whatever. It's not like I don't know how to drive, but I definitely feel like I could be a much better driver. And like I feel like I got to make up for some sort of lost time that, that I was spending in the Aristo or something. I don't know.
Listen, you got to stop shitting on the Aristo every episode. It was a dope car.
It was
Stop it.
the car. That's the thing is the car was sick, but like to me, the car getting hucked backwards into the corner and just like demolishing tires would have been fully sick. But like I found it really hard to do in that car. So I don't know if I was just not a good enough driver or the car was just difficult or like not set up properly. But like, yeah, like what I wanted to do, I couldn't really do it. So that's why I'm like, I need to either get more skills or a different car.
What about when it's like basically, well, if you raised your car, it would perform better. If your tire wasn't as stretched, it would perform better. Like when are you willing for it to perform better?
Okay. So does not compute. Okay, my cars have to work for sure. Like, but I'll do everything in my power to make it the most crazy car that still sort of works. So that's kind of, that's what the Arista was.
All right. So what did we land on? Zs or Zs and G35s are the car. If you were starting out in drifting, that's what you would buy in North America.
Yeah.
Are JZX 110s even that cheap? And if you were in Japan, would that even still?
Yeah, 110s are cheap, man. I mean, they're the cheapest out of the JZXs for sure.
They're even the cheapest for us. So
yeah, they're the cheapest
so
for us.
Why don't you buy one of those now?
Me or him?
Either one of you.
Well, I have one.
That's what I said would be.
Yeah, I have one, but it's just not together.
Well, you have the Blitz, right?
But I also have the 1J engine and everything that to go into it, so it would be a JZX 110. Yeah.
So why don't you stop buying?
The Crown is basically a 110.
Yeah, and the Crown is basically a 110.
Listen,
okay, so the reason I don't build that car as a seat time car or as drift car or whatever is because I actually like that car. Like for me, part of this whole seat time or practice car thing is like I kind of have to dislike the car a little bit. And I definitely am not super, super fond of G35 sedans. Like I like them for what they are, but in stock form, they're ugly, ugly, ugly cars. So, and the fact that it was totally cheap and like was going to get crushed is kind of like, now I can kind of go beat on the thing and not really worry about it too much. Whereas like a JZX 110, I know that if I put that car together or kept it nice, I could sell it for like, let's say 20 grand or whatever, right? I'm not getting 20 grand for a G35 sedan. Like no way, shape or form is that even possible.
Ever.
So,
yeah.
Not on your life. If you only had one car and you had to do everything with that car, what would the car be?
If I could only have one car and I had to do everything with the car, I think
including
right
driving
now,
it, like including driving it every day.
Yeah, I think it would be the Crown. I mean, I'm driving the Crown every day right now. I love driving it, and yeah, I mean, if it was 6-speed and had all the shit that the Altezza does, I can't imagine not being super stoked with that car.
Gerard, same question. If you had to have one car, not just a myriad of Nissans sitting
you're probably going to be surprised at my answer. It would 100% be a JZX 110. Like it'd be a Verosa or
Not at all surprised by that answer. I'm delighted by that answer, but not
it would 100% be a JZX 110 because the Nissans drive great and everything, and you know it's cool and stuff. But like if I'm driving it every day, it's going to be a JZ, just because it's sick and it has the potential for more power and it is a reliable car. And Toyotas generally are more reliable and more robust. So I mean, if you add the daily driving into the mix, like I need my windows to work, you know, I need the door locks to generally work. Like, you know, I don't want the suspension falling apart.
I feel like the actual answer then to the question, because we did like the seat time, is what we just said. It's like, what car would bring you the most joy and check all the boxes? And it's like, if you were starting out, what would you recommend?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that what you guys just said is the actual answer to the question. If you're starting out,
the problem is those cars, the entry barrier is much higher, right? Like you can't buy a JZX 110 for $3,000.
Right.
I mean, for us here, I would say that the absolute minimum price.
Almost buy a JZX 110 for $3,000. You can't get it landed here for $3,000.
And it will not be manual transmission. There's not a chance it'll be manual.
No.
Will it be
no chance in hell?
Will it be a 1J?
Yes, it could be. It could be.
Okay.
But see, that's what I mean. Is like the absolute lowest price you could probably get a G35 sedan. The cheapest out of any of those variants would probably be the sedan, and you could likely find a sedan 6-speed for like 3 to 6K. And there's no chance in hell that you could even get an automatic 1J car for that much. So you still got to do like a $5,000 swap.
I said the G35 like straight out of the box was comparable to the Altezza with the or better than the Altezza with the Beams motor, like all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So then we want that to be the final answer. No Toyota products.
But I mean, like that's the thing, man. Cost is definitely an issue, right? Like cost is always an issue.
Dude, I had
what
the car.
You want
I
or
had
what
the
you
car
can get.
and I got rid of it. Like
Kevin got rid of it.
Sure, you know, that's what I mean. It ticks all the boxes. It's the perfect thing on paper. It makes the most sense. Like if a good friend was like, hey man, like I have this budget and I want to, you know, start drifting this summer, like what should I do? Like that's what I tell them to do. But like Would I do that? No.
But you also,
Fuck
but
no.
you were also trying to build it as like a sick car. You know what I mean? It's like short of doing an engine swap, like you're stuck with the VQ, which I mean, I know you don't really like, and I mean, a lot of people really hate just because it sounds whack or whatever. But like, yeah, like that's the engine that comes in that car. So it's like you got to live with every aspect of that car, including
It
that
wasn't
trumpet
terrible.
VQ.
You know what? Honestly, to me, it was probably like having the NA2J IS.
Mhm.
It's like it's right there at the cusp of being enough, but just not quite, you know? And it's like if you had the Turbo 1J, it's there, but it's like if you have I feel if you have the NA2J, it's just not quite there. And like to get anything more out of the VQ or the NA2J is like a big step,
Well, I don't know, man. The
you know?
VQ is like definitely like respond. I would say the NA2J is probably a bit more difficult, but like at least you have options with the VQ. You got the headers, intakes, spacers, and a tune. Whereas like with the NA2J and the IS, like what are you gonna do? Like put it on a standalone? Like, no, like you know what I mean? Like you can't tune the factory ECU. But yeah, I mean you got cams and headers and all that other
I mean,
stuff too.
you still have cams headers. You could do the
But you're
NAT for probably pretty cheap.
but you're working with 200 horsepower versus almost 300 and the same weight of car, right? Like an IS is about
Yeah.
3,200 pounds, and I mean the Infinity isn't, but the Infinity like chassis is around 3,200 pounds, but you have almost 60 or 70 more horsepower to start with, right? So yeah.
I zoned out really hard and started imagining what drifting would look like if it was all Zs and G35s, and then I was just like, oh,
just
drifting
go on the internet.
It's done now. Drifting's done. Nobody shoots it. Nobody wants to go to events.
So how long though till that car is priced out? You know, till that car all of a sudden
Oh
now is a
man,
$10,000. The G35 sedan is a $10,000 car.
I don't know, man. I mean the trannies are going up. Like I just bought
The
I just
trannies are
bought
going
that
up.
The manual, basically everything to swap
Do they
that
have
car to a
another one?
manual.
Yeah,
The
the Eddie
tranny?
one. Yeah.
Everything to swap like to swap it to 6-speed, pedals, drive shaft, everything. I think it was like $1,200, which in my opinion is overpriced for a 2004. Like that's a lot of cake for some kind of janky tranny, a drive shaft, some pedals, and like an e-brake. Like it's a lot of money, man. Like so I mean the parts are definitely going up, but I think the cars are just still fairly abundant. Like it had a long run. It was like
Yeah, it did have a long
2002
run.
to like 2008 or something like that. So I mean that's like it's a lot of cars. And then I mean the auto ones, there's the G25X's. Like it's pretty easy to convert them all just to a 6-speed rear-wheel drive, right? So
This has become a very active commercial for my least favorite drift car right now. I feel like.
I mean,
okay,
honestly,
so
we could talk about the BMWs because
no, I don't like those either. Okay, go on.
I mean, I don't know. To me, they're the same thing as the Nissan. They're just like a engineered to be sporting car.
they drive
It's built
awesome.
to be lightweight, not survive a long time.
Yeah, I
And
think a lot of
they're
people would argue for
exactly they're
BMW for
exactly like
sure,
Nissan.
man.
You know?
Like a ton of people would argue for BMW for sure.
Oh no, totally. I bet they would. It's just it's not for me personally,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
mean,
just not
I
for
don't know
you
anything
because
about them, so maybe
you don't have a bunch of them.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing is if maybe I knew a bit more about them, I'd be more inclined to buy one of those or recommend one of those. But it's like the Nissan's familiar to me, and like I don't know, I like the brand, I like the motor, I like the, the parts available. Like for us, it makes sense as a company. Like yeah, I mean, I guess you could just get an E46 sedan. I don't know what engines they come with or whatever, but I'm sure you can get like the top engine 6-speed E46 sedan for probably not a lot of money now, but maybe like in a year or two, they're probably going to be priced out, if not
That's the
already.
thing. I already consider those to be like those to me are already higher on the curve
Yeah,
than the Nissans.
absolutely. Yeah,
Like they're a
absolutely.
BMW. It's like
Yeah.
imagine 10 years ago all the dudes just like smashing E30s into walls. And now it's like if like no one would dare do that because they're worth so much. So it's like
Yeah.
in 10 years the E36 is going to be the same thing and people are going to be like
I think it already is.
all these kids destroying these cars like
Yeah.
I think you can get an E46 cheaper than E36.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think at this point now, like the E90s are probably like
E90, yeah.
Yeah, you can probably find E90s everywhere now. I mean, that's like a 10, 15-year-old car already.
You know, as a culture, we really like reap what we sow. And the dad joke in here is like, it's karma. I'm not going to keep that in, but it's like we take these cars that are like meant to be affordable, and then we run them all into the ground until the prices go up, and then
Yeah.
nobody can have them
Yeah,
anymore.
like-
But I mean, yeah, I had bad experiences with the BMWs when I was younger, so I just like absolutely stayed away from them. Like I just like fucking hated them. So that's probably the biggest reason why I don't play with them.
So final answer, we're just going to stick with Nissan is what people starting out should get.
Yeah, I mean that's my answer.
Fuck, I don't even-
People, I mean, you know, like the other thing is just like, yeah, like use what you got, you know?
Yeah, that's my answer now. Run what you brung.
Yeah.
So now you've got a bit of seat time, and like, you know, you've like let's say you've what is it like you've put in your time, you've paid your dues with like whatever shitty car. So now
Use the
what?
handsaw. You've used
Yeah,
the
you've
handsaw
used the
for your-
handsaw, and now you're like, yo, I'm getting a chainsaw. And like, do you go out?
Yeah.
Do you go out and like buy the craziest chainsaw, or do you, like, are you wise fab gangster now? Like you like, yo, I need more angle, bro. I need an LS, bro. Like you need all this stuff now, or do you just like level up a little bit? But I think at this point, it's like build what you think is sick, and which I think what I did want to touch on that. I don't think it's bad to just like building cars. Like what
Yeah.
if you just like
Yeah,
having a sick
no.
car, and like you're not so into drifting, like you want to go to an event,
No,
sure,
no,
cool, and
totally.
like, but like, yeah, like what if you just want to have a
I
sick car?
yeah, that's the thing is like I'm coming at it from like solely like the drifting point of view.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
It's just like, yeah, there's a million reasons to build a car, and there's a million reasons why you want to purchase that product and put it on your car.
Mhm.
You know, and it doesn't have to be about being a better driver or being able to like do a certain maneuver at a
Move,
certain
yeah.
place. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, you're not going to be like, oh fuck, look at this like quote unquote drift car that you don't even drift. It's like, I mean, maybe the dude just likes drift looking cars. Like, I don't know, cool.
Mitch used to win best drift car for his JZX100 at shows. That dude didn't drift.
Yeah, that's funny. My own personal opinion was like, I like to have a sick car that I drift. I mean, when people call their cars a drift car, I mean, I guess that's essentially what it is. But for me, it's like I want to build a car that I think is fully sick and drift it. That's kind of where, that's why I had the Aristo. That's why I had the Cressida, because I thought those cars were sick and I drifted those cars.
I mean, I've never straight out purchased the car that would be the best for drifting either. And, like even when I bought the Corolla, I knew the S13 was a better drift car.
I don't know if I know anybody that straight out buys the best car for drifting.
240, bro. 240. 240 is the best, like was the best.
Yeah.
Which I
Corolla-
guess today is the 350Z.
Yeah, but Corolla dudes would argue against that, and I think that they're.
I don't think any Corolla dude that actually drifts this car would ever argue that a Corolla is a better drift car. Then they're just jerking themselves off. Like,
Well, when I watched the Drift Bible that was in there, and I thought that was
yeah,
anyway.
exactly. Like,
That's
some like initial D type shit right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the main character in Initial D didn't drive an S13.
Takumi could drive it.
He never spilled his tofu liquid.
Tofu liquid.
Yeah. No, I think he's trying to not spill the. I don't know.
I know. But it's just funny when you say tofu.
It's a cup of water.
Oh,
A cup of water.
Is it a cup of water?
He has to drive so smoothly that the water doesn't come out of the cup. Yeah.
I'm fucking Googling this.
I am Corolla God. Don't you dare doubt my Takumi knowledge.
Did you watch Initial D? All of it?
Yeah,
obviously. Yeah, of course he has.
Yeah.
You can't be.
I haven't seen the live action movie.
There's a live action movie. Dang.
It's the tofu store, so he works.
Yeah, he works at a tofu store.
He delivers tofu. Tofu.
Yeah, but the
and
water.
I thought the point was the liquid
No.
didn't like. Guys.
I think that the water in the cup was just a test to like improve his driving.
Yeah, his dad tricked him into making him a good driver.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, well, you seem to know an awful lot about it for not seeing it.
I've seen some of it, but I thought it was like he was carrying because it was tofu delivery, and then there's the brine. I eat a lot of tofu. And there's the brine that
Well,
took
there
it.
you go. You said brine, but
But
like,
isn't
when you
that
say
isn't
tofu
that
liquid,
when
it sounded weird.
wouldn't that be like the raw tofu? They wouldn't be delivering raw tofu, wouldn't they?
What do you mean
I
raw
mean, I guess they
tofu?
would
It's
be.
like
No, I guess
cooked
that makes
tofu.
more sense. Well, yeah, that's
Tofu
what I
is raw.
always thought. No, I always thought in my mind they were delivering like cooked tofu to people. Like,
Well,
here's your
it's a
tofu. Like it's like a pizza.
Oh,
delivery,
like a takeout order.
yeah,
Oh,
like a takeout
that
order. Yeah,
only sells tofu?
No.
yeah, it's Japan. I don't know. Like, doesn't seem so
No, man.
unfeasible.
He's just delivering like raw tofu. I'm pretty sure it's raw
Okay.
tofu.
Yeah,
Okay, well then the
it'd be
brine
in a
totally
brine.
the brine totally seems like a feasible thing.
Yeah, maybe it's in buckets in the back of the car or something, right? You just
There
want
was
to fill
that
the
he put in
bucket.
that was the
Imagine,
thing.
I'll take an order of fried tofu.
It's gonna rip down from the mountain.
Can I get some vegetables with that? No, man.
No,
Tofu store.
just
We only sell
tofu.
tofu.
Yeah. All right, now we're really far off topic.
I
Yeah,
don't
like-
mind. I don't
We've been
care.
I don't want 5 minutes of initial D in this fucking podcast.
Where were we? You're
What you
buying
would
your next-
build.
Yeah, what you would build. But and I think you touched on it. What you would build is at that point it's whatever you want.
Okay.
Okay, Ryan, I got a
That's-
better question.
Yeah.
So what if relatively speaking, money was no option and you wanted to build a drift car, what would you build to learn with?
An Aristo. Which is a bad choice.
Imagine the Aristo can just sit there. Yeah.
I would buy a JZX 100, I guess, or a 110. I would actually get a JZX 110
For 40,000 or what?
Yeah. If money's no option, I'm gonna get a JZX 110, not a Verosa, because I can't do that. I'd get like the Mark II.
Okay.
And that would be that. And I'd be happy.
So I got a question for y'all. What do you say to the guy who's like, "Yo, I'm gonna build the sickest drift car. It's gonna be like a UCF 20 or like a Q45, and I'm gonna like do this and I'm gonna do that, and it's gonna be so sick." And like, you're just like, man, like you're doing the most. Like, just don't even do that. Just like you
Unless
have no
that
idea
dude-
what you're getting into.
Unless that dude builds like one car a year or has built 10 cars, then he stands no chance, in my world.
I'll tell you what I would do. Politely nod my head until I could exit the conversation. And just be like, right on, man.
But
And
there is always that guy. Like, we get guys or people or whatever all the time being like, "Oh yeah, like I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that and I'm gonna build this," and you're just like, first of all, you're probably not gonna build any of that, but second of all, like, dude, you're so far over your head, like you have no idea like what's involved to like even get that car. I mean, even we get that with dudes just trying to like drive their cars super low. They just like have no idea. You try to help, but like they're just
For
so
every little incremental step you make an advancement in your vehicle, whether it be like, okay, I'm going to have X amount of horsepower, or my cars are going to be like X centimeters off the ground. Like, for every centimeter lower you go, it becomes infinitely harder to get there. And same thing, it's like, to go from 200 horsepower to 300 horsepower isn't super hard, but going from 700 horsepower to 800 horsepower is a bunch of work, and going from 1,000 horsepower to 1,100 horsepower is double as much work. And
yeah, like
these dudes talk to us and they're like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm just building my car. It's, I need that clutch. It's gonna have to hold 700, 800 horsepower." And it's like, "Well, how much horsepower do you have now?" And it's like 300. It's like, well, then, they're like, "Oh, is this clutch gonna be drivable?" And it's like, well, is your 800 horsepower JZ gonna be drivable? Like,
Yeah,
they don't
exactly.
really comprehend it's a whole system and everything has to work together.
It's a steep learning curve. Probably part of the reason back then when I blogged more was because I felt a need to always try to like educate people to some extent for whatever knowledge that I had, or share my opinion. So if anyone ever wanted to talk to me about something, I would try to be truthful with them. And then the more you go down that rabbit hole, and probably the more experience you have with it, like you guys have, it becomes harder and harder to repeatedly have to have
Oh yeah.
gray sky conversation with people that just want to be like blue sky. And it's not going to work the way you want, and it's going to be a headache. And then eventually you're going to turn 27 and realize that like cars are very expensive and the ROI on it isn't entirely there.
Yeah,
And
like
then
you
you're
could
going to buy a house.
you could have just been drifting a 350Z the whole time.
Yeah, to my dismay.
You know, sometimes you can't just be
Yeah.
told you're doing it wrong. You got to do it wrong yourself.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that's part of it, is like you have to learn from your mistakes, but then there's also people that it doesn't go their way and they just give up and walk away from everything, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely.
scorch earth behind, and I'm never coming back to this.
Yeah.
I feel like those people don't hang out in cars or don't do drifting. You know what I mean? It's like that person's not going to last at the skate park.
I always like refer to those people as like tourists to the scene, right? Like they're not part of it.
What happens when the dude who's been to all the events, like been in the scene, like had the cars, then shows up with the like 1,000 horsepower, like full crazy angle, complete ridiculous car? Like you don't really hate on him, right?
No, he's
'Cause
definitely put in
feel
his
like he maybe
dues.
paid his dues, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, at
Yeah,
that point, he's
exactly. So
probably
you're
a
not
fucking
hating
sick
on
driver.
you're not hating on the car. Yeah,
No.
exactly. He's probably a G.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
probably just like chucking it
Not you, like a
backwards and like.
gangster.
Yeah, I know.
Kevin, are you trying to get at the point that we don't hate the cars, we hate the people?
Yeah, I hate everybody.
It's probably a bit of both. You know what I mean? Like, I guarantee you, when dudes show up with 100s in the States, and like, you know, they got like VSKFs and like car modified Aero and like Ganadors, and like there's definitely like a bunch of people like, oh, like fuck this guy, like, you know what I mean? Like,
You're always gonna say must be nice. You're always gonna be, you're gonna walk by it, must be nice. Like that's
Yeah.
One thing I will say though with the Aristo is there wasn't a whole lot of that. I don't know if it was just too far out there. Like there were people that are like, yo, that's a cool car, but like there weren't that many people that really saw that and were like, I'm gonna build that. Like, I mean, maybe I just didn't know, but I feel like it still took a while to catch on. And I think obviously with Hurt building one, it's gonna sort of like propel that chassis to superstardom of some sort. But like there's not a whole lot of people like pining to build fucking GS drift cars. Whereas like I feel like a 100, people are like, yo, like I want that car. You know what I mean? I don't know why, but that's just how it is.
The Aristo has a North American counterpart to it, so it kind of,
it's not as exotic.
Yeah, the Aristo is always followed with an explanation, and that's what I find with my car. It's like you can't just say like, oh, I drive a Porsche or I drive a Supra. It doesn't explain itself. You have to say it's an Aristo, which is a GS 300, but from Japan. But it came with a super, and like, and I'm saying when you're talking to people that don't get it, super engine, and but they only came auto, but mine's a manual, and it's real world drive.
Yeah,
and then like you're trying to give them a sales pitch on why your car
too far.
It's cool.
It's too far like gone to understand. Like here's like buddy guy A who's like S13, S14, and you're like 700 horse Aristo with like everything under the sun, and he's like, that looks cool, I guess. You know what I mean? Like they just don't understand.
Cool GS. Yeah, it's too far of a disconnect because it looks familiar to a car that you've never pined after. Like it's like, oh, my grandpa drove a GS.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing with the Stagia too. Like when I built.
No, my grandpa didn't. But I mean, like some dude would say that. I know.
And like I was just saying, like the Stagia is the same thing. It's too far gone. I could explain all day long that is an FM chassis, same as a G35, same as a 350Z. 80% of the people would be like, cool wagon. And then the second I bought that G35 and posted it, everyone's like, oh, you're making G35 parts? Like, oh my God, like sick. Like Z make Z parts. And I'm just like, I literally had this conversation like months ago that I purchased this other car that's the same car, but looks different. But like people are just like, they just don't understand, right? They want what's easy and what they know. Like people just need to know.
Good. So what did we land on? It's a balance, which is what we all kind of figured out coming into this. Is seat time or the build more important? And I think, I'm not going to answer the question. Who fucking cares what I think?
For me, it's a baseline. You got to have like a certain baseline that isn't the bottom. And then you could get a lot of seat time in whatever that baseline is.
So how much horsepower is that? Let's like actually.
I would say like 270 to 300 in a 3200
Depends on the weight of the car. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Like coilovers would be great. You can weld the diff. You could do it with a stock seat and stock steering wheel.
Yeah.
You could probably do it without coilovers, you know.
Yeah,
and honestly, like I won a drift event in the Corolla with an open diff, but coilovers.
Yeah, but you're Kevin from SERIALNINE. That's a different story.
I mean, you just gotta drive Mach 10 and huck the car as hard as you possibly can. But
all right, did we solve the age-old debate? I think we
we
did.
Which
we
came
did
first?
a lot of things.
As Gerard wanted to frame it, which came first,
The seat time.
or the build?
Or the build.
Far out of the way.
I don't really understand how like one came first is relative to like which one is more
Yeah.
important though at all either. So,
That's not the
That's what I'm
analogy.
saying. You don't really know which one came. You know what I mean? Which
All right. Well, that was a great episode.
Yeah.
Maybe. Thanks for hanging out with us.
funny story though. Like when
Alright.
I was
Say goodbye, Gerard, and then I'll turn off the recording.
Oh.
And then we'll talk.
goodbye,
sorry.
Gerard.
goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Serial Podcast 9.